Today we're going to learn about the next part in the story of Tom Crean. He wanted to be the first person to reach the South Pole, so Tom joined Robert Scott on another expedition which began on the 24th of October 1911. This was on the ship called Terra Nova. They expected the trip to last at least 5 months, and 16 men joined them. They brought heavy sledges with them to drag across the thick snow and ice. The terrain was extremely dangerous, as the glacier was full of deep cracks called crevices. As the team were just 140 miles from the South Pole, Scott thought it best for only 4 of them to continue. Tom was devastated when he wasn't chosen. Scott and his 4-man team struggled on for a further 2 weeks. As they approached the South Pole, they were dismayed to see a Norwegian flag in the ground. A Norwegian explorer named Roald Amundsen had beaten them to it. Amundsen had used dogs to pull the sledges across the ground, which was much faster. As Scott and his team ventured for the South Pole, Tom and 2 of his fellow explorers, Bill Lashley and Taff Evans, were sent back to the base camp some 1,200 kilometres away. Severely bad weather hit the 2 on their way back, sending them miles off course. The harsh conditions caused them to become very weak. They were running out of food, and Evans collapsed. When they were 56 kilometres from Hut Point, the crew ran out of food and became so weak that they couldn't drag Evans any longer. Tom volunteered to finish the journey alone so that Lashley could keep tending to Evans. Tom left the pair at 10 a.m. on Sunday, 18th of February. He was cold, starving, thirsty and exhausted. He only had 3 biscuits and a bar of chocolate to eat. He had no means of navigation. After 18 hours, he made it back to Hut Point and collapsed after telling his crewmates to send help to Evans and Lashley. Both Tom and Lashley were awarded the Albert Medal, the highest recognition for gallantry or bravery. Scott and his team who had ventured onto the South Pole planted their flag beside Amundsen's and headed back for home. However, the bitter weather conditions had withered his men. Frostbite had affected some of the men and it was slowing them down. While on their way back to the base camp, a drastic drop in temperature caused the team to halt. The last entry in Scott's diary was made on March 29, 1912, presumably the day he died. The explorer Ernest Shackleton was born in Kildare in 1847, the eldest of 10 children. Shackleton sailed on Discovery in 1901 and led other expeditions before leading his most famous on the Endurance in 1914. Tom Crean joined him on the Endurance, where their objective was to walk across Antarctica from coast to coast, a journey of 3,000 kilometres. Tom played a central role in the plan, and it would be his defining moment in polar exploration. On their way to Antarctica, Endurance got trapped in ice for almost 10 months. The ship drifted 1,950 kilometres while stuck in the ice. Eventually, the pressure of the ice was so strong that the ship was crushed and abandoned on October 27th. It was a disaster. The 28 men aboard were left stranded on the ice, floating on the ocean and more than 1,600 kilometres from any human settlement. Nobody could track their movements, meaning nobody knew where they were, and they had no means of communication. For the following 170 days, the crew drifted more than 3,600 kilometres north. The ice melted from an initial mile-length piece of ice to less than 150 meters. Food supplies ran short, and the dogs were killed to use as food rations. On April 9, 1916, open water was reached and the crew were able to launch lifeboats that they had saved from Endurance. Crean manned one of these with 9 others aboard. A week later, they reached Elephant Island. The men had been out at sea for almost 500 days. 300 days had been spent on Endurance, 170 days on the ice cap, and 7 days on the boat. The men thought that there was no hope. They had no food, no communication, and were 1,600 kilometres away from where they were supposed to be. A makeshift camp was made by turning the boats upside down and covering them with tents. 6 members of the crew, Tom included, set off on a 1,500-kilometre boat journey to South Georgia to find help. After arriving at South Georgia, Crean and 2 others had to trek 48 kilometres across the mountainous island before arriving at a whaling station. It took 3 months to rescue the 22 men stranded on Elephant Island. Tom came back to Ireland and rejoined the Navy. He married in 1917 and left the Navy a few years later. He opened the South Pole Inn in Annascaul, County Kerry. He died in 1938 and was buried in a tomb he had built himself, which overlooks the Kerry Hills. The South Pole Inn still exists today and features many tributes to one of Ireland's most famous and celebrated explorers.